would actually help a lot because it interferes with the signal, so that would be very helpful. Also, if you're in the audience, if you got a voter guide when you came in, there are question cards in there. If you have questions for either of the candidates, write them down. Please print if possible. Raise your hand. Amanda LeClaire here will come around and pick them up, and we'll gladly take them up to me so we can get to that in the Q&A section. And also, if you could, if all possible, hold all applause. This is going to be a live radio broadcast, so hold your applause until after the candidate has finished. That would be very much appreciated. Thank you very, very much. And we're going to get started here in just a moment. First, we thought we would open with some remarks from Harvey Hollins III, Vice President of Government and Community Affairs here at Wayne State University.
Good afternoon. Well, thank you. I owe you lunch, Rochelle. Good afternoon and welcome to Wayne State University. On behalf of President Jay Noreen, our board, and the nearly 36,000 men and women who comprise our student body, faculty, and staff, we welcome you to this town hall, the 2009 special general election for mayor of the city of Detroit. We also want to thank the campaigns for agreeing to do this. This is GOTV week, and they're out there campaigning real hard in neighborhoods and lit dropping and doing all the stuff to get elected. So we want to thank them for doing that in this particular week. And we also want to thank the law school for providing this venue and WDET for actually doing this live. Usually I will sit down and say enjoy the program, but this is not a program and this is not entertainment. This is an educational forum because so many people believe in this city. And we all want to see this city be what it ought to be and what it should be. And so we want to encourage you, irrespective if you live in the city of Detroit or not, to pay attention to these elections because we all want to see leaders who we can be proud of, and we also want leaders who are part of the solution and not the problem. So please, please pay attention, take notes, tell your friends and neighbors about what you learned here today, and then empower yourselves, take your souls to the poll, and vote on May 5th. Again, we appreciate you for coming today, and we welcome the two campaigns for being here again. Thank you.
All right, and we're going to begin in just about a minute and a half here. And again, it is a live radio broadcast, so again, appreciate holding applause until the end of the event today. So thanks everybody for being here, and we'll get started in just a moment. Thank you, sir. Just about a minute out now.
15 seconds.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Wayne State University's Partridge Auditorium for this special Detroit Mayoral Town Hall meeting. I'm Craig Foley of WDET, and I will serve as your moderator today. Over the next 2 hours, we'll hear from both of Detroit's mayoral candidates, Dave Bing and Ken Cockrell Jr. However, this won't be a debate. We'll hear from Mr. Bing in the first hour and from Mayor Cockrell in the second. Joining us to ask questions this afternoon is an esteemed panel of Detroit journalists. Hewell Perkins anchors the evening newscast for Fox 2 Detroit. He's won an Emmy for his work in the anchor chair. Thank you for being here, Hewell. Rochelle Riley is the Metro columnist for the Detroit Free Press. Her work often prompts Metro Detroiters to dig a little deeper to find answers to the region's problems and hang on here in Detroit. And also, Bankole Thompson is the senior editor of the Michigan Chronicle. He's also the author of 2 books, Ignoring the Underprivileged and A Matter of Black Transformation. And a reminder, the audience here in the auditorium will have a chance to ask questions as well. Throughout the event, we will collect questions written on index cards, and I will ask some of those questions later in the hour. And because this is going to be broadcast live on WDET, we're going to ask you to hold your applause until the very end. We want to make sure that everyone gets to hear the candidates' answers. And now, Dave Bing. He was drafted by the Detroit Pistons in 1966 and became the NBA's Rookie of the Year. During his summer breaks from basketball, he worked to learn about business, and in 1980, after retiring from the NBA, he founded Bing Steel. Mr. Bing is now chairman of the Bing Group, a series of manufacturing companies in Detroit. And Mr. Bing, thank you very much for being here, and you have 3 minutes for an opening statement. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. During this forum this afternoon, you will see a clear difference between my opponent and myself. This has been a very difficult time in the lives of Detroiters, and I think it's very apparent that leadership is going to be the key differentiator between myself and my opponent. I offer a track record of job creation. My opponent does not. I offer a track record of consistent, balanced budgets. My opponent does not. I offer a proven track record of leadership. My opponent does not. I am committed to making Detroit a safe city. Most recently, from Forbes magazine, Detroit is considered to be the most crime-ridden city in America. I am committed to providing the youth of the city of Detroit the very best education possible. And I am committed to using all of my contacts and all of my resources to bring needed jobs to our city. Most recently, I've been traveling around this city, and quite frankly, I'm appalled at the way some people are living. There's squalor, there's dirtiness, and it's something that we can continue to support. And I am driven by your hunger for jobs, safe neighborhoods, and the very best education that we can provide for our children. I am driven for the change that we all want here in the city of Detroit. Change that will impact all of our lives. Change that we can believe in. Change we can trust. Change that I can and will bring to the city of Detroit. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Bing. And we will now turn to our esteemed panel for a few questions. And Hewell Perkins, you get to go first.
Oh, many of these questions are provided to us by students and faculty here at Wayne State. And I am going to begin with a question coming directly from the people who live and work here. And they have a question about city services. One of the biggest complaints of city residents is the high taxes that they're paying for what they call inferior city services. What can you do to improve the level of those services without raising taxes?
Number one, I don't think you can raise taxes at all here in the city of Detroit. Our tax burden on the citizens that are here is extremely high. I wouldn't even give that a second thought. However, as it relates to making sure city services are provided better than they have been is very, very important. And that's where I think management skills become very, very important. I don't think a lot of the employees in the city of Detroit are held responsible and understand that the citizens are the customer. And whatever you can do to satisfy your customers ought to be done. Too often, some of our employees here in the city think they are doing the customers a favor, which is not the case at all. So I would not only hold those employees responsible for what they're supposed to do, but also hold the management team accountable for making sure that they manage city service appropriately.
Rochelle Riley.
I too want to offer a question from the students and faculty, but I want to offer it as a follow to what we were just talking about. The question they asked is, it has been years since Detroit has had a balanced budget. Why is this a problem that can't seem to be fixed? I'd like you to answer that in light of the previous question about services and whether Detroit is too big to service given that the population is nearly half of what it used to be.
I think in retrospect, as we look at Detroit 40 or 50 years ago when it was at its peak from a population standpoint, some around 2 million people, we're at half of that population today. The demographic surroundings in this city is still about the same as it was 40 or 50 years ago, about 139 square miles. But people are been misplaced. People have moved out of the city, and it's just a hodgepodge of our population all over this city. We have to rethink how we're going to repopulate the city. I don't think we are going to bring that population back in, but with people living in so many different places, I think you can repopulate those thriving neighborhoods where there are empty homes. So I would look at, in those blocks where there are just a few homes, one of the toughest things that will happen for me in my administration is to convince some of those citizens that they need to move so that once again we can start tearing homes down that are in tough shape, moving people back into thriving neighborhoods, change the whole mindset that we have in the city of Detroit that we are not who we were 40 or 50 years ago. We're going to be a different city. Our population now is somewhere between 850 and 900,000 people. And I believe you've got to downsize the city. I don't have a plan today at this point as to what to do with the vacant land, but I will be sitting down with key people that will advise me as to what we can do with the vacant land. And therefore, we've got to make sure the services that people pay taxes for are going to be delivered and efficient, effective, and a way that we can finance it. Today, we can't finance all the departments that we have in the city, and therefore, we're not doing a good job in providing services to our citizens.
Macaulay Thompson.
Mr. Bing, let me switch the pendulum here to education. You talked about moving families into the city. Clearly, education is one of the biggest things to attract people into this city, especially if you're going to have an effective functioning city. The question is, should the mayor of Detroit take over the Detroit public school system? Can you go on the record for us on this afternoon?
In answer to that question, I believe that there are models that are working in urban America in some of our key cities where the mayor has the total responsibility for the public school systems. It seems to be working in Chicago, in New York, in Boston, in New Orleans, and maybe in a couple of other cities where the mayor has the total responsibility and is being held accountable for educating the children in the public school system. We had problems here traditionally where there was a takeover going back to the John Engler time frame, and our citizens here were very upset about that. It was a takeover board. Today there's an elected board, and I think over the last 5 years, I don't believe that our DPS system has gotten any better. It's a model that's broken, so much so that the governor has called in a financial person to get the financial side of DPS back in order, and that seems to be working. The problem has been on the flip side is that we don't have, I think, a person in the classroom that's going to make sure that kids are going to be taken care of. They're going to get a good education. So from my vantage point, I'm not going out asking the governor at this point in time that she should turn over the power to the mayor so that the mayor can run the school system. But if, in fact, the governor wants to do that, I would be happy to accept that responsibility and be held accountable for it.
So, if I could ask a quick follow-up real quick, if that's okay. Would you be acceptable to the idea of returning the schools to the control of the current school board once Mr. Bob's tenure is over?
No.
Macaulay.
So I'm still trying to get at what you're saying here, that the initiative is not going to come from you, but if it comes from Lansing, you're going to support a mayoral takeover of the school system.
That is exactly what I'm saying. I believe in order for this city to have any chance of stability and to come back from where we are, it is very, very important that we have the right kind of public education system so our children can thrive. I'm not one that's going out fighting for that right now, but I believe it's so important that it's the governor's responsibility today to decide whether or not that's going to happen.
All right, Hewell Perkins, you're up.
Mr. Bing, the battles between Detroit City Council and the mayor have been legendary for decades. Indeed, the battles between council members have been legendary. In that atmosphere, what do you intend to do to mend that relationship? But also, are you prepared today to name the council members that you feel should be removed from office?
To answer the last part of that question, the answer is no. But I do believe that relationships are exceedingly important. I think it's okay to have disagreements, but there's a way to do it. And we have those two parts of government representing us here in the city of Detroit. And it's become very embarrassing the way things have been handled in the most recent past. I'm the kind of person that feels that you have to respect your opponents. You have to respect who they are and what they bring to the table. And I think there's been an attitude of disrespect between the mayor's office and city council. There are instances where I believe city council is asked to vote on issues where they don't have enough information in a timely enough fashion to assess how to vote. I think from a courtesy standpoint, from a professional standpoint, we need to get much better in terms of how we represent the city of Detroit and its citizens. So I would take whatever time that would be necessary to build the right kind of relationship with the city council people, whoever they may be, because we have to work together for the betterment of the city and respecting the citizens in terms of why they voted us there in the first place.
Rochelle Riley.
Mr. Bing, I have another question from the students and faculty. You mentioned the crime issue and the fact that Forbes has named us the most dangerous city in America. The city of Oakland, California is considering using private guards to patrol some areas of that city as a cost-cutting move. Is this something that you would consider in Detroit, where there were more than 340 homicides and 11,000 other crimes last year?
Well, I guess I would be pretty open-minded to anything that's going to improve the crime rate that we have here in the city of Detroit. But I do believe that our police force is a good police force, and provided that they're given the resources, both from a human and an equipment side, I think they can get the job done. Everything that I hear is that we're undermanned. And so just by getting additional policemen onto the force, out into the street, in the neighborhoods, is something that I think I would be very supportive of. Whether or not I wanted to outsource and bring in somebody outside of the police force as it exists today, I'm not sure that I would do that, but I would be open-minded to looking at it. I believe that we've got a lot of police officers that are sitting behind the desk today. We've got to figure out whether or not we can get those police who've been trained out into the streets. Too many of our police seem to be deployed downtown. And anytime there are major events downtown, we just have a plethora of officers all over the place, and I think it's unnecessary and unwarranted. The plea that I'm hearing from the people in our neighborhoods and our community is, how about us? When is somebody going to pay attention to us? So we need police cars going through the neighborhoods. We need police on foot walking the neighborhoods. When I was a kid growing up, I knew police officers in my neighborhood. And because of that, they were well respected. They were not our enemies. They were our friends. And they were, in some cases, like parents to us. And we've got to get back to that. We've got a culture today that don't respect our police officers and our public safety officials. And it's something that's hurting this city, and it's something that I think we've got to change.
Dave, let me ask a quick follow. The city is $300 million in debt. From where would you rob Peter to pay police?
Well, I think there are a lot of inefficiencies in most of the departments in the city of Detroit. I think there's money to be found provided that you manage it appropriately. And that's one of the things that I think I bring to the table, having been in business for the last 29 years as an automotive supplier, because every year our prices go down, our expenses go up, and we've got to figure out how to manage the mere resources that we have in a better way. The same thing has to happen in the city. On the other hand, I think there are departments in the city of Detroit that you really have to take a hard look at. There are core services that must be provided to the citizens on a day-to-day basis. But there are some ancillary services and departments that maybe we can't afford anymore. Is there a possibility to consolidate departments? I think so. Will it be necessary to cut out some departments? Probably. But before I want to make that decision, I want to make sure I have an opportunity to get into the mayor's seat with some experts that I'll be bringing to the table with me so that they can give me some advice in terms of how to deal more effectively, more efficiently, and be responsible from a financial standpoint.
Michael A. Thompson.
Mr. Bing, there's a movement in the city of Detroit to amend the city charter and create a council by districts. Can you go on the record here to tell us if you support council by districts and why?
I absolutely will support councils by district. As you talk about the charter, a lot of the people that I'm talking to over the last 7 months want to see the city charter change. So on the ballot, I think in November, we're looking hopefully for a charter change that will, for the next 4 years, set up a situation where we will be able to change city council by districts. I think over the last 40 or 50 years, once again, when our population was burgeoning, we had 9 city council people, all at large. Nobody had a direct responsibility or were held accountable. And I think what people are crying for today is responsibility and accountability. I think because the city has shrunk so much in terms of its population, the question is, do we still need 9 city council people? I think not. I think we should save the city some money, have 7 city council people, maybe 2 at large, 5 by district. But before we do that, we've really got to take a step back and understand how the population has shifted here in the city of Detroit. So I am definitely in favor for council by districts.
Hewell Perkins.
Mr. Bing, we have been known for decades as the Motor City, but as you know, both GM and Chrysler are on the brink of bankruptcy right now. Ford has lost money, losing billions over the last few months. You know that all too well as the owner of an auto supply business. What is your vision for Detroit without the power, the money, the majesty and might and tax base of the auto industry?
Well, I don't think we're going to lose the industry altogether. It's going to be different than what we've known it to be historically. But our city and this state and this region will still be pretty dependent upon the automotive industry. It's not going anywhere. It's just going to change a bit. That change will have a negative impact on the city and this area, no doubt about it, because unemployment rates are already high. They're going to even go higher. The tax base that's provided to the city from those car companies is going to also not totally evaporate, but it's going to go down substantially, and how we're going to backfill that is going to be a problem. I think we have to stop looking at ourselves as victims and start looking at ourselves from an opportunity standpoint. We have something in Detroit that most Midwest cities would die for. We have an entertainment venue, or many venues from an entertainment standpoint, that most of our competition in the Midwest does not have. We're one of the few cities that have all professional sports in this area. We're one of the few cities that has the entertainment from a gambling standpoint, casinos. We have 3 casinos here in the city with hotels attached to them. There are things that are happening. We have the theater district, which can compare to almost any other city in the Midwest. And I just think we've got to look at the positives that we have in this city, and we start building on that. The opportunity now presents itself in the state for movie-making industry. We haven't seen that in the city of Detroit yet, but we've got, if you go back to once again and you talk about Motown, before I ever came to Detroit, the 2 things that I knew most about Detroit is that it was the car capital of the world at that time, and it was the Motown sound. And we're losing both of them, and we've got to figure out how not to let our history pass us by. We've got a lot of intelligent people, a lot of cultural positive things here in the city, and we've got to get our young people back into the mode of thinking that I can be another Motown great. I can do some things that may not be automotive related, but from a technology standpoint, we need to move in some different directions.
And before we continue on, I'd like to remind folks you're listening to a mayoral town hall meeting with Dave Bing from Wayne State University. We're broadcasting this event live on 1019 WDET. You can also see a video stream of this at govaffairs@wayne.edu. And we will return to the panel questions in just a moment. I want to remind folks we have carved out time for the audience to ask questions. Get out your question cards, write them down. Amanda will pick them up, and we'll get to those in a few minutes. Back to the panel now. Rochelle Riley, I believe, is up next.
I have another question from young people here at Wayne State, but the question could be from any of the young people across the state, and that is there any hope of having a regionalized transportation system like every other major city in the United States? And what can you do to make this happen?
Well, I think we're way, way behind the eight ball. No question in my mind about it. As the 11th largest city in the country, we are the only major urban city across the country, I think, without rapid transit. I think we start off with the bus system here. We have two bus systems that are competing and not doing a very good job, either one, quite frankly. I think they need to merge. I would like to see that happen, and that would be step number one. It's my understanding that there's a plan in place today to do the first phase of rapid transit up and down the Woodward corridor, going from the base of the river all the way up here to Wayne State. And I think that's a plus. It's my understanding out of the 13 stations that are planned, 10 of them seem to be financed at this point in time. Our problem is going to be the cost. It's cost prohibitive today to try to do too much too quick. So I think it's a long-term process that we need to look at. We're going to need federal assistance. So I think it's very important for those of us who are voting, and hope we all vote, the politicians that we send down to Washington, we've got to give them the message how important mass transportation is going to be for our area, and we need to put it on them to bring the bacon back home. I think that's very important. I think it's important to this city and to this region, and hopefully we'll see vestiges of that before the end of this year.
Michael A. Thompson.
Mr. Bing, when the mayor is elected on May 5th, one of the things that is expected of the mayor is to be the envoy for the city, I mean the spokesperson and the face of the city. Given the political turmoil that the city has gone through and the national, international attention that the city has received, how would the Dave Bing administration help to improve the city's image?
It starts with me. I've been here for the last 42 years. I think I've been totally committed to and immersed in this city. Everything that I've tried to do since I've been here has been in a positive vein. I've never gotten in any trouble. I don't think I've ever embarrassed the city. And once again, I represent, if I'm mayor of the city of Detroit, I represent all the people here. And so I'm going to make sure that I respect the position of mayor, I respect the city, I respect its residents, and everything that I can do to be a positive ambassador, not only going around Detroit, state of Michigan, and the Midwest. I want to go nationally and I want to go internationally. And because I've had the opportunity from my prior career to travel all over the country and internationally, I've always spoken in very, very high esteem about the kind of city Detroit is. I don't want to look at Detroit in a negative vein. Too many people are now taking pot shots at us, and I think we make the mistake of buying into that everything here is wrong, nothing good is happening. There are a lot of good things that are happening here in the city of Detroit. If you take this area itself, right here at Wayne State, it is a gem that nobody seems to talk about. And from my vantage point, for all of the good things that are happening, I want to go out and spread the word, because I'm one who believes that my glass is half full and not half empty. So everything that I can do to be supportive and be a cheerleader and be an ambassador for the city of Detroit, I'll do that at every chance I get.
There is no skeleton in the closet that will come and haunt the city, correct?
From me?
Yes.
No skeletons at all. That's the good thing about me. I've not been in the political arena, and that's very helpful for me, I think. Everything that I've done has been in the open. I don't have anything to hide, and I look forward to the opportunity, once again, making the image of this city what I think it ought to be, and that's doing it in a very, very positive way. So anything that I've done in either one of my careers here has been transparent, and it's been above board. Do you have enemies, or do you have somebody that don't agree with everything you do? I'm human, so that's probably there. But once again, for 42 years, I've been out in the public, and people know who I am, what I represent, and I think it's all positive.
Rochelle Bradley, you had a follow-up to that?
I had a quick follow. You talked about what you would do, but it's more than a one-man job. So what can you do to help restore Detroiters and Metro Detroiters' pride and support in this effort?
Well, I think I want to truly interface and work with as many of our citizens as possible, because what happens is I don't think until you start to change the mindset of the population that we have here, and all of us kind of get on the same page, the same hymn book, and talking about the positive things. I would want to bring in with me into the administration a really top-notch PR team, not just to trying to gloss over the negative things that are here, but I think what we have to do is be very positive about who we are, what we are, and the direction that we want to go in. I don't want to sweep under the carpet the negative things that are here, because they have to be dealt with. And I think part of the problem that we have today is because we knew 20, 30, 40 years ago that we had issues here in the city of Detroit, and nobody wanted to deal with them. Everybody put their head in the sand as if the problem was going to evaporate and go away. In the business that I'm in, you can't do that. It's all about performance. It's performance on a day-to-day basis. And I think the same thing has to be embedded in our hearts here in the city of Detroit, that we know who we are, we like who we are, with all of our warts and everything else. We can be one of the greatest cities in the world, and we need to get back to that mindset.
Mr. Perkins, your turn.
Mr. Bing, metropolitan areas around the country, such as Indianapolis and Miami, have found ways to merge county and city services, cutting costs and increasing population. The students here at Wayne State want to know what you can do to move Metro Detroit towards regionalism, how to bridge the divide between the city and suburbs, and should there be some sort of regional governance?
I think that we've got to learn to work better together. Absolutely no doubt about it. Detroit is a city in a crisis right now. We're hurting. We don't have the resources that we need to provide the citizens with the services that they so desperately need. We are sitting next to the second richest county in the country, Oakland County. I'm sure they have their problems also, but they're also doing some things right. When we look at the rest of Wayne County, when we look at Washington, when we look at Macomb, we are a region, whether or not we want to accept it or not. And there are services that I think can be merged from an efficiency standpoint and from a cost standpoint that everybody can kind of buy into. We don't have to continue to do all the things that we're doing. If, in fact, some of our neighbors are doing things better than us, more cost-effective than we're doing, I think we have to take a look at that. And we've got to stop looking at Detroit and this microcosm as it's us against the world. We've got to open our minds up, because now we not only from a Detroit standpoint are competing against other local cities around us, but now it's becoming more important from a regional standpoint. I look at a Pittsburgh, I look at a Indianapolis, I look at a Milwaukee, I look at a Columbus. There are other major regions in this area that are beating our socks off because we're too constantly infighting amongst ourselves. And I think we've got to stop that and look at what can we do together as a region so that we can take advantage of all the great resources that we have.
In keeping with that, as we saw in the Cobo Hall fiasco, racial animosities are very near the surface. You scratch one portion of that and all of a sudden there's an explosion. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure that regionalism does not become hatred?
Well, I think once again, we have to be adults about this. We accept the fact that racism does exist. We have to talk about it on a consistent basis so that once again, we're not sweeping things under the carpet. It's a problem that we've had in this country for a long time. It's obviously a major problem that we still have in this region. So every time that we don't get what we want, we want to blame it on outsiders, or we want to blame it on race. You got all of the code words that are being thrown around right now. When are we going to stop that and really sit across the table as people, respect each other? And it goes both sides. It goes for our suburbs respecting us in the city of Detroit and vice versa. I don't think there's an easy answer to it, but once again, I think you've got to keep it out in the open. You've got to constantly talk about it. There are people from my generation who, in my opinion, are the real culprits of this conversation continuing to happen. From the 40 and under, you don't see racism as a major issue because they've grown up in a different time and a different era. And I don't think racism at that age limit is so apparent as it would be from 40 and above because we lived in some different times. But I think it's something that we continuously have to talk about and have to come to some reasonable explanation as to how we go forward, putting that behind us as best we can.
And I'd like to remind folks you're listening to a mayoral town hall meeting with Dave Bing from Wayne State University. We're broadcasting this event live on 1019 WDET, video live at govaffairs.wayne.edu. I'm Craig Foley, and we have time for questions from the audience. Get your cards in. We'd be more than happy to take those. In the meantime, I would like to go back to something that you mentioned early on when you said that a lot of city employees treat their jobs as if they're doing residents a favor. That seems like it's a mindset issue. How do you go about changing the mindset of people as opposed to forcing them to make changes in their work habits?
Well, it's going to be very difficult to force change. People have to be receptive to it. And I think it starts with leadership, once again. And that's one of the virtues I think I bring to this office. I've been a leader in every facet of my life going back to my young teenage years. Because I lead by example. I'm not afraid to make hard decisions. I'm not afraid to disagree with somebody, but I want to do it in a respectful manner. As far as this mindset we're talking about, once again, it starts at the top. And I've got to do what I'm supposed to do, and then I got to delineate down through the ranks what my expectations are. In my business, I sit down with my management group and we come to an agreement in terms of what my expectations are. They have input. And once we come to an agreement, then I hold them accountable. And I think that has to permeate throughout the organization. There are no consequences in a lot of cases for the way some city employees treat our tax-paying citizens. There has to be consequences when you don't perform the duties that you're paid to do. So this whole entitlement mentality is something that we absolutely have to change, and I think I'm the one to make that change when I become mayor of the city
Craig,
of
can I do a
Detroit.
follow-up on that quickly?
Please do.
Mr. Bing, on the heels of what you just said, again on transparency, accountability, given that corruption and the specter of pay-to-play politics has been hovering around City Hall for a while, what would you do to address that? And tell us here, I'm sure you have a kitchen cabinet in waiting, what vetting process are you going to do to make sure that those who take over City Hall, should you get elected May 5th, to come to the table of equity with clean hands?
Well, there is a ethics policy that exists today in city government. Whether or not it has teeth in it is another story. One of the things that I would do for any of my high-level appointees is they would sign an ethics policy that would require them to do everything above board with transparency, understanding if there are any problems that they're going to be fired on the spot, quite frankly. The other thing I don't want them to do is in a lot of cases you have people in decision-making capacities that will develop a relationship with an outside vendor, and they get the golden parachute so that when they leave city government, they develop this relationship, they've given business, to these vendors, and that's where they go to make their money. And my ethics policy would disallow that to happen because at least for a 2-year period, they would not be able to do that because they would sign this ethics policy, and I think that's going to be very important. As you talk about a kitchen cabinet, one of the things that I'm going to do is bring in the right kind of purchasing talent. And that's not to say the talent isn't there in the city today, but I want to bring some outside viewpoints to the table because there are too many policies and procedures that are outdated. And I want to make sure that we update everything to make our policies and procedures as current as we possibly can because the world has changed. And I think we're operating with policies and procedures that are 30 or 40 years old. So once again, I don't think I've got all the answers, but what I do know is what I don't know. So I will bring the people with me, surround myself with the kind of talent, capacity, and capability to make some recommendations for change and change for the better.
Mr. Bing, I've got some questions from the audience. We've got a few minutes to get to these. This question says, you have promoted your business background as an asset that you bring to the position. What specific experiences in this background prepare you for a position where virtually all major decisions are shared with 9 other people, many who see their interests as different from your own?
Even in my own business, where I know if I need to make the final decision, I can make it, and I can disagree with everybody. But I'm a team player, and it goes back to my first career where I understood that in order for the team to win and had success, everybody needed to understand the talents and the lanes that they had to play in. The same thing would be true in city government. Even though I feel the experience that I've gained in the 29 years as a business person will help me in the position of mayor, I also understand how important it is to get along with other people. And as long as we all are on the same page, and that's doing what's best and what's right for the city of Detroit and its citizens, I think we can come to agreement on most things. But there probably are going to be some times when I don't agree with what city council may or may not do. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to need 5 votes to get things passed. And I will make sure that I've got relationships with at least 5 of those people, and hopefully we're going to be on the same page most of the time to get things through the system.
And this question, Mr. Bing, if and when will you give up the Franklin residence? And also there's a question in regards to your response to the safety violations at your companies.
The safety violations that we had in the company, in the manufacturing world, I don't think anybody's perfect. So if you were to go in almost any manufacturing facility today, you're going to have safety violations. Whenever violations came up to me, I fixed those violations, and I reprimanded the management team for not letting me know in the first place. So I reacted as fast as I possibly could to anything that had gone awry and tried to make the corrections. As it relates to the Franklin home, I still own that home, and if anybody in the audience wants to buy that home, please see me after this.
All right, we have time for one more question from the audience before you give your closing statement. And this is a question about after-school recreation, suggesting that a lot of the problems in the neighborhoods come from a lack of socialization and recreation for young people. What will you do to address that?
As a kid growing up, one of the reasons I think I didn't get in any trouble was because of the recreation centers in the area where I was. And I think that's a problem here in Detroit, and it's a budgetary problem. And unfortunately, to balance the budget, decisions were made, not necessarily decisions I would agree with. I think as kids come out of school at the end of the school day, if they don't have adult supervision and some activity that's going to be rewarding for them, they're going to look for things to do, and that's what's happening right now. I don't think kids are bad born, or born bad. You know, they're looking for things, and they're looking for attention, they're looking for love, they want to be around adults, and as best I can, I would keep as many recreation centers open as I possibly could. I think there's a potential opportunity with a lot of the schools closing down, not the big schools, not the high schools, not the multi-level schools, but if there are elementary schools that are at one level, if the schools are in decent shape and we can go in and retrofit and save some of those schools and make it an after-school program there along with a recreation center and maybe even a mini station there. We got to start using these resources. We don't have to tear everything down. We might be able to retrofit, but for sure, there've got to be after-school activities. Otherwise, kids are going to get into trouble, no doubt about it.
All right. Well, Mr. Bing, you now have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
In closing today, I'll pose what I believe to be the primary question in this election. Who is best to lead this city forward? If you think Detroit has gotten better over the last 10 or 12 years, and you're satisfied the direction that this city is going, then I'm probably not your guy. If you want change, positive change, that's something that I think I will bring to the table. Then you ought to be voting for me. Detroiters want change they can trust. Since he's been mayor, our unemployment is up. The budget isn't balanced. The schools are crumbling, and he can't close a deal. I ask for your vote because for the last 42 years that I've been here, I've done nothing but try to make Detroit proud. And now Detroit needs a mayor with a proven track record of leadership, one who can get things done through very difficult times. Our city faces very serious challenges. We must revive our neighborhoods. We must make them safe. We must educate our children. And we must project an image of Detroit to the world that makes us the destination place and tells the true story of its greatness. Detroit needs change it can trust. Detroit needs effective leadership. It's time for both. It's time for change. And vote for me because I will be your change agent on May 5th. Thank you so very much for having me here this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bing, for your time this afternoon. Thanks as well to our panelists, Huel Perkins, Rochelle Riley, and Bankalay Thompson. I'm Craig Foley, and right now we join Quinn Kleinfelter in the WDET studios. All right. Stick around, everybody. Of course, Ken Cockrell coming up at the top of the next hour.